Look, the bottom line is silver is undervalued, and it's undervalued in many ways. But you could argue that this pullback, at least from the perspective of above, was done so because the commercial banks were wickedly short, and I think beginning to get nervous. So does that mean, that this is the end of the cartel? Maybe. There are guys that I follow on X, very good chartists and technical analysts that seem to think that the cartel is done with it. They don't have the ability to maneuver the markets the way that they used to. One of these days that will be the case, which is the whole premise of the little boy who cried wolf. And the little boy who cried wolf keeps saying this is going to happen, and it never does until the wolf comes. And that's why being prepared is very important. And look at every single one of these counterintuitive price actions where, damn it, didn't happen, but we thought it would, as another gift to get, to continue to buy before the price becomes stupid or the availability is gone. Now, I believe that will be the case in a world of probabilities. I don't know when, but I think it's highly probable there will come a point where silver goes higher than people think possible. Um, I don't know when that is, but based upon the supply-demand imbalance, the lack of silver that's found in the ground, the continual structural deficits, the lack of inclusion in the military-industrial complex's role in the Silver Institute numbers. I mean, I can keep going on and on and on. The fact that it's coming out of the ground at 7-1, it's been 16-1 for 5,000 years, yet it's priced at 80-1 or nearby. There's a million reasons why silver is, in my mind, the most undervalued, underappreciated asset on the planet and the trade of a generation. And I don't say that lightly. What happens is people get very disenchanted with the counterintuitive action, the lack of performance in a world where it should be performing. But then ask yourself, why would you have a handful of commercial banks naked short to the degree that they are the most concentrated short position in any commodity ever traded on COMEX? There's a reason they're holding it back. But when the rest of the world says, good, you hold it back on price and we'll stand for delivery, and we'll jack up the price in Shanghai if you're able to get it to us here, good, go for it. We'll pay you $4 premium. These things are compelling and, overlooked. And I think what is real is that the flight of metal from west to east is real. And the lack of understanding or the just blowing it off as being not important baffles me. I think it's real, and I think the consequences of it ultimately will be profound, shall we say, in a world where silver is needed for so many things. And I think it is a critical metal. It's not an industrial metal. And I think a large portion of the players that are holding down the price understand its strategic properties and realize we're late in the game and they better hold down the price so they can stockpile the hell out of it before it goes higher. To me, that's what's happening. And I guess we'll have to see if I'm right, but that's what the smoking gun or the crumbs that I see seem to be pointing in that direction.
Yeah, the one part I really like about that is how they mention who can pretend knowing exactly how an ounce of physical silver is worth after decades of manipulation and turning real investors' demand from physical to paper, right?
You know what else I would say to that, though, brother? I would say, who the hell knows what any asset is worth right now in an environment where, we've seen, look, since COVID, we've seen 6 trillion in freshly printed, papered over money and 8 trillion in deficit spending. But you go back before that, even with interest rates at zero for 15 years, you throw interest rates at zero and throw money at the economy, asset prices are wickedly distorted. House prices are distorted, although coming a little bit back into line with the raise in rates, raising the mortgage rates. But everything, all asset prices, stocks and even bonds, everything has been distorted in asset prices. The real distortion has been suppression of interest rates, where since 1982 up until 2023, rates went straight down at a 45-degree angle, making everything in stocks and bonds and real estate worth more money in an environment where illusionary interest rates or interest rate suppression and easy money created all these distortions in asset prices. And the funny thing about it is that the one price that they didn't let distort to the upside, they distorted to the downside in an era of all of this money and suppress interest rates were precious metals. So it's like a coiled spring that when the suppression ends, it'll slingshot because you have all of these contracts that are written against it holding down the price and creating a distortion in its real price just to the other direction. Because what gold and silver are, they want us to believe that they're just commodities, but what they really represent is kryptonite or the antithesis to the system. And rising gold and silver are the canary in the mine shaft. And speaking to the problems of a system, the frailty of a currency, the inflation of a currency, all of these things, gold and silver are kind of barometers against it. So, not to mention, silver has become strategic in a world where it seems warfare is everywhere. So, with the amount of silver needed in all of this high tech weaponry, and it's omitted conveniently from the Silver Institute's numbers. I mean, they should be way higher. To me, that's the reason why you have these banks suppressing the price. Why Bart Chilton was told to back down instead of prosecuting J.P. Morgan when he went into his superiors and said they're in violation of our agreement and antitrust law. And he admitted on Chris's channel, Chris Marcus's channel, back down, Bart. It's a political decision. Of course, I speak of Bart Chilton, the former CFTC commissioner who died a week or two after that interview on Chris's channel. So when you talk about where it should be a hell of a lot higher. And you're right, no one knows. And that's what happens when you create distortions in price discovery through manipulations in interest rates and throwing more money at the economy in a short period of time than we've ever seen. And this reckless policy, fiscal and monetary policy, I mean, it ultimately threatens, the whole free market system because it's distorted things so badly that when interest rates and asset prices find equilibrium in a real environment that isn't being suppressed, God only knows where how high the price of gold and silver can go, but conversely, how low traditional assets that are measured against inversely to a rise in interest rates. So the whole thing is price discovery is a very challenging thing in a make believe bizarro world that we have been living in for a long time. And this is where trusting your gut and trying to feel it out, where does it end up? I think, is appropriate. No one really knows. Trust your gut. An asset that is wickedly needed, expanding in utility and uses and decreasing in its footprint in nature. How high can it go? Higher than anyone thinks possible is what I would say.
I like that. So what's up with what's going on around the world? Is there any updates with BRICS or any other things you want to talk about news-wise?
Yeah, a couple of things from the stupid, stupid, stupid category. The U.S. House of Representatives has just approved the confiscation of frozen Russian assets and their transfer to the Ukraine. And obviously, this signals to China and Saudi Arabia and all the other countries in the Southern Hemisphere that hold our U.S. treasuries that, hey, we'll freeze you, we'll seize you at any point. What ultimately happens to the bond market? Who would be stupid enough to hold any long term duration treasuries from a government that has chosen inflation over austerity and will confiscate your assets and use them to fund the country you're in a war against? I mean, this is as stupid as can be. Today, Biden and Zelensky signed an agreement that the United States and the Ukraine, a bilateral security agreement for 10 years. So we're committing support to the Ukraine as for the next 10 years. I mean, you just can't make this shit up, man. And as a result of that, what else should we expect when the Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman from Saudi Arabia has turned down an invitation to the G7 summit in Italy this week? Starts on Friday, and what should we expect? The G7 leaders have agreed to lend the Ukraine $50 billion using the Russian frozen assets, and funds will be used for military budget, humanitarian, and reconstruction support. The income comes from interest stream on the immobilized assets, the EU official said. The principal is untouched for now, but we have full opportunity to seize the principal later if the political will is there. You can't make this up. It's one thing to sanction, it's a whole nother thing to confiscate. That's a big, big, big deal. There was if you remember, we talked about there were 200 meetings from the beginning of the year to October of this year when the big BRICS meeting happens. And there was just a big one in Nizhny Novgorod. And there was an article that listed 54 points, takeaways from the meeting. I'll read three of them. One, there were 21,000 people who attended from 139 nations. 78 billion in bilateral deals were signed on the sidelines. That means deals where I'll pay you my local currency, you pay me your local currency. We won't use the dollar. 59 nations plan on joining the BRICS. 59. And this is a big deal. A couple other things. The Iranian foreign minister came out and said, what can be viewed as the most important goal for BRICS is the reform of the Bretton Woods system, which has always been an obstacle to the progress of independent and developing countries. The U.S. uses the dollar as a weapon, so BRICS is on a mission to change or completely dismantle the Bretton Woods system, as it is based on the dependence of countries on the U.S. currency. The United States, which has weaponized the dependence of countries on the dollar, which, along with illegal sanctions, banking restrictions, inequality in the decision-making process in international financial institutions, and lack of consensus in these organizations, has proven that these highly unjust systems must be reformed and dismantled. I find it interesting that JP Morgan's executive director of strategic research, Amy Ho, and the global head of research, Joyce Chang, just sent out a note to their clients saying that the Biden's administration's latest tariff announcement on 18 billion of Chinese imports has elevated the debate on whether China's dominance in the critical mineral supply chain will emerge as the latest battleground for U.S.-China strategic competition. She wrote, in 2022, China produced 68% of the world's rare earth minerals. Not real thought out well for North America if we want to go green, when China produces 68% of the rare earth minerals, which are used for things like magnets and batteries. 70% of the world's graphite, which is used in lubricants, electric motors, and even nuclear reactors. However, China's real dominance lies in the mineral processing capabilities. According to JP Morgan, China processed 100% of the world's graphite supply in 2022 and 90% of the rare earths and 74% of cobalt and other critical mineral for batteries. Increasing dependence on critical minerals, which are key inputs to semiconductors, electric vehicles, and military weapons, has raised concern that China could use its dominance in this supply chain to retaliate against U.S. industrial policy. Well, we just sanctioned a whole bunch of companies in China as a result. This is the kind of thing that they can use against us.